Hello everyone and welcome back to the CrunchLabs Masters Champions Chester. This is Division 2 and 3. My name is Anna-Maja and I'm here joined by Jules. Once again, we're back together. How are you feeling about today's matches, Jules?
I'm very excited for today's matches. It is the semifinals of the winners bracket, which means we're going to have a lot of very interesting matches. Also, we saw some crazy upsets yesterday. Hikaru got knocked down to the losers bracket. Kramnik is still in the losers bracket, so he's continuing on his journey there. So I think we're going to see a lot of very exciting games.
Absolutely. We have less players now since a lot of the players got knocked out in the losers bracket already, but we still have very exciting matches going on. In Division 2, we have Vladimir Fedoseev facing Vidit, so that is going to be a very promising match. And also the other match in the winners bracket is Jules Musar and Alexander Grischuk. So only 2 matches left in Division 2 winners bracket as well as Division 3 winners bracket. So a lot of matches still to look forward to, and it's going to be super tense.
Yes, and someone in chat said we actually do have Arjun Dubov today in D3, so that is going to be a very interesting match because they have almost similar styles. I think the way the chatter Krishna put it is an exciting matchup of madmen, so we'll definitely get to see that.
Yeah,
for sure. Love looking over both their games.
When I was setting up for the stream, I was thinking, is Dubov really in Division 3 as well as Arjun? And like, what is going on? I thought they would be at least in Division 2. So that goes to show how strong this event is, that even some of the strongest players are in Division 3, which means that Division 2 and 1 are just stacked. So it's a really exciting event overall, and a lot of fighting happening on the board.
And while we get started, why don't, if you're in chat right now, put where you're tuning in from, because I'm interested to see your guys' time zones. Right now it's about 10 a.m. for me here. Anna-Maja, what time is it over there for you?
It's 5 p.m. over here, so we're nearing the evening over here.
I know, I've been waking up at like every single morning I come on the screen, I'm like kind of yawning, I'm like, good morning, Anna-Maja. Yeah. She's already had her whole day. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like almost the end of the day. It's crazy.
But we are really happy to be here this morning, and let's see, while you guys are telling us where you're from, specifically what time zone. I want to see what early risers we have.
And maybe we have some late birds. Maybe there's places where it's midnight.
That would be impressive. And while we look, we have a game between Vidit Gujarati and Vladimir Fedoseev on the board right now, and this is a really important game. We saw Fedoseev knock out Hikaru Nakamura yesterday in the winners bracket. He's been playing very, very well, and we will see. But also Vidit's been having some really good games on it.
Yeah, true. He has been playing really well, really strong fights. Yesterday, Vladimir Fedoseev knocked out Hikaru, as we mentioned, and not just in you know, a normal way. He was down 1 point at the very beginning. He lost the first game, and then after that he made a crazy comeback. So both players seem to be in very good shape, and now they're facing each other. So yeah, let's see who is going to survive in this match. As you guys know, they're playing a best of 4, as it is the winners bracket. So in case the match ends in a 2-2 tie, the players will go for Armageddon. And yesterday we were spoiled with the amount of Armageddons, so perhaps today we'll see a few more.
Wow. Yeah, perhaps we will see a few more. We saw so many Armageddons and actually a few flags. I think we had 4 to 5 people flagging yesterday. I don't know if it's our fault, like maybe we're jinxing it somehow, but we're always like, don't flag, and then they flag.
It happens so much.
Watching from India, watching from Ecuador, watching from England. I am glad to have y'all from all over the place. I see none of y'all are as early as me today, although 10 a.m. isn't very early.
Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, a lot of Europeans in chat, a lot of people from Asia as well. So awesome to have you here, guys. Let's take a look what's happening in this game, because white has a pair of bishops, so that is very appealing. And black has this isolated queen's pawn, but at what cost? Because those bishops are not so great, not really well placed. This knight on e4 is so strong, and black is the one launching an attack now with the move queen e5, threatening to go to h2 very soon. So this is exactly what you want when you have the isolated queen spawn. You want to start an attack on the king side, towards the king at least, and this is what black is trying to do.
Yes, and that's actually a very good lesson because it's something I've been studying chess for a little bit now, but that's something I've only started to learn recently is pawn structures and that isolated queen pawn. So for y'all who don't know, that's that d5 pawn right there tends to be an overall longer range weakness, which means if you get into an endgame with that IQP, it could spell trouble. So you always want to go for that very big attack, which is what we see Vidit doing right now. And it's a little bit tough to stop Anna-Maja. Maybe you could try to push g3. Is there any other ways we could try to stop this attack?
So I guess the first step is to see if it's actually that dangerous. Do we have to be concerned about queen h2? And when you look at it, first, let's say you give a black a move here. You just play a random move with white. And then black plays queen h2. The king can simply run away with king f1 and then just sit on e2. And funnily enough, it's hard to see how black can actually break through here. Because this pawn on e3 is very well defended and it's covering the king very well. So perhaps white should not be so scared of queen h2 just yet. And first try to defend that pawn on b2, which is also attacked. So I guess that would be a good idea, but it's not easy because white's position is a bit cramped here with those two bishops just unable to do anything.
Yes, not only that, but we see his time ticking away. I think he's down almost 3 minutes now, maybe 2 minutes actually, 2 minutes now, which isn't a lot, but it can make the difference in a tournament like this. They're both actually trying to play blitz games. It's what, move 18? I guess it's been a few moves. They deserve to let their time tick down.
Yeah, I mean, they have 10 minutes with a 2-second increment every single move, so it's sort of a deceiving time control. It feels like you have so much time, much more than in Blitz, and especially Bullet, but as soon as you start spending some time on your move, you realize that, oh, like, you're down to 3 minutes, where did my time go? And then at some point when you're down to 20 seconds, you have to start playing super fast, and that's where the mistakes happen the most. So you'd rather save up the time and perhaps play a few inaccurate moves, maybe not the most optimal moves, but at least you save time, and that can be so crucial later on if the game keeps going.
And we see right here, he did not end up going for this bishop h2 tactic, instead moving rook e8, and that allowed white enough time to push g3, blocking the tactic altogether.
Yeah, so with g3, now white also has opportunity to play king g2, and well, it remains to be seen what white is going to do about the pair of bishops. I mean, you can decide to get rid of the knight and take on e4 on next turn. Not something you would want to commit to so quickly, but perhaps it is one of the very few choices in order to activate the other bishop, because right now this bishop is not heading anywhere.
Good morning, Kami. Good morning, everyone tuning in. Yes, you're absolutely right. That bishop is a little bit sad, and we've been seeing so many sad bishops lately in these games. Like, maybe because we've been seeing a lot of French defenses. But I don't know. We've been seeing a lot of very, very sad bishops.
Yeah, it's true. It's not only happening in the French defense, but I do see what you mean. It happens quite a lot, and yeah, perhaps in this online time format, knights can be trickier, so I can see why the preference goes towards the knights here, because this knight on e4 is amazing.
That was a really interesting move with bishop c3, because it feels like you're giving yourself a weak, very, very weak pawn that might even get taken right away. I don't know. Maybe it can't get taken for tactical reasons. Probably can't get taken for tactical reasons. I'm thinking maybe something like if knight takes, you take, queen takes c3, maybe something like queen h5 works and you get the d pawn. But either way, it seems like an odd choice. So we're gonna see it in play here because this line is getting played out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess white just value the light squared bishop over the dark squared bishop. So white decided not to take the knight on e4 with the light squared bishop, but instead give the dark squared bishop up for that knight. And of course, black wants to take that. Otherwise, you'd have to move the queen to a bad square. But by taking back with the pawn, it looks very strange, as you mentioned. You weaken your pawn structure so much. The pawns on a3 and c3 are quite terrible, but in return, black also has some weaknesses. The pawn on d5 and the pawn on b7, especially that one is under attack already, so you can't just take on c3 very easily. You will lose a pawn on b7, or maybe even face rook c1 and then rook c8. So there's definitely some
look at that.
Yeah, there's definitely some moves.
Rook takes b7, you get that rook on that really nice 7th rank. Maybe you can even double up your rooks, which I think if they didn't do queen takes c3, you probably would have put rook b3 and doubled up anyway.
Right.
But this looks very, very nice for white at the moment.
Yeah, so rook is on the 7th rank, but the rook on f6 is defending the pawn on f7 very well. So black does not need to worry about anything just yet. And yeah, by opening up the b file for the rook, now white is gaining more space on the queen side, and seems pretty balanced, funnily enough.
Should we take a look at Hikaru's game as he's in the loser's bracket? And for you guys who don't know, loser's bracket is only best out of 2. So they're going to have a few less games today.
Yeah. Let's take a look. Hikaru seems to be in the winning position as he has the queen on the board, and the material imbalance shows that the queen is against 2 rooks. Just as we tuned in, Hikaru seems to have made the wrong move, but it's not easy in these type of positions to find the right moves at all times. It's quite difficult. Is there a chance that he mouse slipped, Jules?
That's interesting. Let's look.
I would take that pawn on a5.
Yeah, maybe. It could be.
Oh. Okay, bishop takes h6, so after g takes, there's a fork on f6.
A very Hikaru move. Yeah, it would be nice to have that a5 pawn done with, but what can you do there?
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that Hikaru may have mouse slipped his queen to a6. It's hard to say what the idea was exactly behind this move. It makes so much more sense to simply capture the pawn and start pushing the a pawn, as that is the only pass pawn in the position.
And in fact, that is the move that is suggested right now, which is a little frustrating if you originally intended to make a move and you have to take another second to make a move, which we see him doing. Queen takes a5. So I think you're right with your mouse slip theory there.
It's possible, but for now, Hikaru is still in the better position. He may shift his queen towards g5, and just as I am saying that, Maxime plays f5, stopping that altogether, and this knight has to retreat. So now the question is, what is Hikaru going to do here?
That is a really good question. What is Hikaru going to do here? I'm not exactly sure. He needs to keep up the pressure. He needs to keep up the attack. You do have these 2 rooks against the queen, which is always very interesting. I really do like this a pawn, which you want to push, but you don't want to get any of your pieces stuck. You have to move your knight right now, but where do you move it? And we do not see him moving his knight. We see bishop takes g7.
Yeah, both pieces were hanging, so how could you have saved both at the same time? Very hard to see, and I guess that's why Hikaru gave up the bishop for a pawn, and now the material imbalance is even crazier. It's queen, and how many pawns is it? 3 pawns versus 2 rooks and the bishop. Now, what do you make of that? I'm not even sure if the players know what to do about this.
No, I don't think either of the players really know what's going on with the eval right now, but I do like this passed pawn we have on a4. Yeah. I don't think it's to be underestimated. I think that's exactly the kind of pawn that Hikaru likes to push.
Yeah, and I guess black has this like piece majority on the board, so you can perhaps work with that and start pushing your e-pawn all the way to e4 and try to create some play on the second rank with your rooks. But yeah, at the same time, white is the one that has so many pawns on the board, so these pawns can indeed create quite some damage. And yeah, we'll have to see if Maxime can take care of those pawns.
Absolutely. But the time difference is starting to get a little bit alarming. Usually we don't care that much about a 30-second difference, especially when there's increment, but against Hikaru, we have seen him be pretty tricky in these kinds of positions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hikaru is has won the Bullet Brawl tournament so many times. I think everyone just lost count at this point.
So many times. Yeah. They're looking, yeah, someone in chat gave the line rook d5. With rook d5, that's interesting. Rook d5,
I guess maybe, was there a knight takes c6 possible?
There was, and you get it, I think you get all your pieces back. But it is an interesting line.
Yeah, something about rook d5, knight takes c6, rook takes, knight takes, and white has the knight and 3 pawns for, yeah, the 2 pieces. So, and also the pawn on c4 is dropping. So I guess this was a really good opportunity for Hikaru, and that's why rook d5 was not played. Instead, let me try to refresh the board. We see bishop takes e5, which makes a lot of sense. So the queen is now on its own, and Hikaru should repeat moves here, as his pawns are not able to do much. The pieces of black are blocking everything very well, and it seems
it's a difficult
like
decision to make, though.
Yeah, it seems like
he'll have to go
settle for it. But how do you make this decision?
Oh, we'll see him make it. Either he has to push for the win and risk losing against a very competitive opponent, or he has to go for the draw now, which he most definitely can do. It's a little bit difficult. F3.
He continues. He wants to play g4 to create another passed pawn, which makes perfect sense. But I'm scared for Hikaru that if he pushes too much, that he might end up in a losing position because of these 3 pieces that black has.
But also his opponent is a little low on time, which he is seeing right now. And look at that g-pawn.
Ooh, it's getting very, very sweaty for that king on h6.
Very sweaty indeed. That king has gone into the sauna. That king fell asleep in the sauna. He woke up and he's like, oh, oof.
Knight g6.
Gotta take a shower now.
Whoa. Wait, it wasn't a score tag. It was not a free piece. Ooh, 4 seconds
on his clock. He needs to move. He cannot. That is so scary.
He's flagging. Oh my goodness. Okay, he played the move. I thought he flagged.
Absolutely. I mean, 4 seconds on the clock against Hikaru, that is something I've had nightmares about. He really just needs to think very quickly. I'm really loving this H-pawn. I wasn't even looking at this H-pawn. It came out of nowhere. It's like that like cute guy in math class or something that like you never see before, and then all of a sudden you see, like, you're like, oh, that H-pawn, it's so nice, because we were all paying attention to that A5 pawn, but now we've got these beautiful connected passers.
Yeah, beforehand the king was blocking it, so the pawn on the h-file was not doing much, but now the king is gone from there, so now Harry is pushing, and it's looking very promising for Hikaru.
Absolutely. It is looking very promising for Hikaru here, especially 2 seconds on your clock. I don't know. Let's see if he can finish it off. G5 seems like a very normal move, just protecting all your pawns, but he is thinking, so perhaps he's trying to go for something a little different. Let's see. Queen F4, check.
It's not easy.
Also protects. Oh, and we're marching with that A6 pawn.
Queen G5, I guess. Okay, he didn't play it. Okay, now he lost 2 pawns, so it seems like Maxime is equalizing, but the 2 rooks are currently disconnected. Okay, rook c6 is a very good move, and now it seems very difficult for white to make progress.
And look at the time. It's now 6 seconds against 10 seconds. Before it was like 5 against 40. So the time has equalized as well. This is just really nice. We're seeing our own bullet brawl right now.
Yeah, they're almost pre-moving.
which they have to. I mean, they do get 2 seconds increment, but you want to keep those rooks connected. You don't want to allow any shenanigans. You lose a rook and you're done for.
Indeed. So Maxime is just moving the king back and forth, and it's on Hikaru to prove that there is some way to, yeah, find advantage here, but it seems nearly impossible.
This is being very, very well held. And here, he tried to push by going b3, queen takes. How do you push? What is the best way to push? But he is a trickster. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever follow like mythology, but like all like the pixies, you know, and like they're all like tricksters, all the elves. Like Hikaru is the chess version of that. He always finds these like last minute moves, these last minute blunders of his opponent. Especially 2 seconds, 1 second, you have to move. Whoa. It would be terrible to flag in this position. That king in the corner is a little scary.
The thing is, white cannot push g6 because you just lose the pawn. So ideally you would want to support the pawn with your queen and then push g6 and somehow trade the queen for the 2 rooks and then win with the c pawn. But by that time that happens, Maxime can already make a few moves that just solidify the position. So really difficult to make progress here with white.
We're still seeing some very beautiful technique. Hello, Operation Crossroads. Hello, everyone in our YouTube chats. It is nice to see you here. Okay, let's look what's going on. That king is
there. You go, g6 on the board.
Right,
this is what I was talking about. You can't take the pawn now. Wow,
that was really nice.
And now the rook that left from c6 cannot take on c5 because it left the pawn alone. Oh, king h6. Okay, apparently the players are missing tactics left and right, which makes a lot of sense. And now this is, I think,
and now
simply
you're
lost.
Down. Very unfortunate. Whoa. He held it so well, but this is a loss for Matlikov. Hikaru Nakamura gets the first point of this match. Matlikov will have a chance to come back. He'll have one more chance, but he'll have to score a win in order to stay in the loser's bracket. But that is very tough.
What a finish. I'm still trying to figure out how this was exactly drawn. I'm guessing that in this position, king f8 was supposed to be played just to get closer to that pawn. And on the next move, no matter what happens, you take that pawn on g6 and simply trade everything off the board and catch the pawn on c5. But rook c8 was the final mistake, and Hikaru punished that very accurately.
Yes, he just absolutely is a trickster. Kept pushing the position until it was very uncomfortable and found a way to win. It's exactly what you need to do in these kinds of positions. So I think very educational.
Yeah, exactly. Because immediately rook takes g6 was simply losing for black because of the opposition. So the king would try to get closer, but the white king also comes closer. And at the end, there's opposition, and this is a winning pawn endgame. So very instructive. But that goes to show that even the strongest players can make mistakes like this, and especially in time trouble, it makes so much sense that it was bound to happen that one of the players would make a mistake in this crazy endgame.
Absolutely. And that's just what we love to see here. That's why I think the rapid format is so great. We're seeing some very high quality chess, but also it does get down to these scrambles, which is also a little bit entertaining for us because we we chaos.
Absolutely, yeah. Jules.
Absolutely.
We're a bit sadistic here.
Yep. I mean, you have to be. You have to be to play chess, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something we sign up for when we play chess.
Absolutely. Nothing like defending a pawn down endgame for 5.5 hours against someone who is half your height and like a quarter of your age. Nothing like spending your Saturday. I remember when I was in college, for you guys who don't know, I just graduated college in December. Yeah. I was doing a tournament, and it was on a day of a big party in our school, like this big outdoor party where everyone was having a lot of fun. And I was just there, you know, next to my 7-year-old opponent who's very sick. So he's like sniffling and like coughing all over the board. And I'm like in a tricky, like very boring Caro position. Like both tricky and boring, so like the worst combination. I'm just like, what am I doing here? Like I'm like in between rounds looking at the stories of all my friends like having fun. I'm here, my company's like 6-7-year-olds. But you gotta love it. You've gotta love it.
Yeah, it's the beauty of chess. Everyone is playing of all ages and Kids may be the most terrifying ones, but yeah, I like to believe that, you know, we also were kids someday, and people also were terrified of us, so it
True.
compensates it in a way, so we can't complain.
Honestly, fair enough. I'm taking a look at all these games we have in Div 2. It seems like a lot of the games have just started, so we're still getting the action up on that. Let's see. We have what kind of position do we want to vibe with? Also, chat, if you ever see a very interesting game, you are our eyes and ears, because we do have a lot of positions to look over. So if you see a game you want to look at, feel free to let us know. I'm not saying we'll do it, but we'll
we can't promise, but we'll try.
We'll attempt.
Absolutely. So we had quite a few decisive results in the first round, at least in Division 2. And especially because in the losers bracket, as we mentioned before, it's a best of 2. So if you lose the first game, you would have to win this next game. And yeah, as Hikaru won his first game, all he needs is a draw in the next one. So that match may be over soon. But if Maxim Matlakov manages to win that game, then we will see an Armageddon already.
And for you guys who don't know, Armageddon format is you make a bid. The lower bid gets to choose which color they want to be. Most people choose black because you get draw odds, but you do have to play with the bid. So you don't want to bid your time too low. Otherwise, you could get in trouble because there's no increment, but it's always a lot of fun. I don't know. I think we should add some rules to Armageddon. Anna-Maja, I think we should do like force them all to like do handstands while they play or something, or like, I don't know, hop on a single foot, or like randomly take a move suggestion from like a 1200 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like calling lifelines.
Exactly. They get to call one friend to make a move for them. We pick one random
audience,
chatter to make a move.
The audience will vote for King E2 no matter what.
Absolutely. And let's see, we have kind of a very weird position when I'm looking at very weird positions here. Well, actually, let's take a look at, well, that game's kind of evened out.
How about the game between Frederick Swane and Vasif Durarbayli?
I was just looking at that.
It looks very interesting, and this is also a must-win situation for Vasif, who is now in a better position. So this is our first Armageddon candidate.
Yes, and I think, frankly, our H-file is the one that's getting the most action today, even though it's just started. Like, look at that. You end up clearing that H-file anytime you want. You can bring your queen in when you're ready. You don't want to do it too soon, and maybe have some interesting attacks. We see a queenside castle here connecting the rooks. We really do like connected rooks, don't we?
Absolutely. That's when they strive. They need to protect each other. So it makes sense that white goes for long castle, as that king will be safe on b1, and white's attention is on the king side to bring all the pieces over there. g5 makes a lot of sense to shut down the king side, but white still has the opportunity to open some diagonals, some files by moving that e4 pawn. So for now, black is still in trouble, but white needs to play precisely to not give up the advantage that easily.
Yeah, it feels like in a lot of these opposite side castling positions, I don't know if anyone in chat gets these very often. It depends on the openings you play. So if you do, let us know. A lot of times it feels like it's whichever side has the most advanced pawns and the best attack. And right now, white has some pretty advanced pawns, although it's not exactly clear. They need to make progress. Otherwise, I think these A and B pawns can become very tricky.
True. Yeah. And the dark square bishop is also looking right towards that queen side. So a move such as a3 is not really desired because that creates targets for black. You may want to sacrifice on a3 at some point in the very far future. So don't move your pawns too easily in front of your king unless you have a good reason to, such as creating Luft. But if you are facing a bishop like it is in this position, then maybe you want to think twice about playing a3.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. And Matthew says he has experience losing in such positions. They are incredibly sharp, as I think we'll see here. We've got Svane moving a little low on time here. A little low
Mm-hmm.
on time. So he's got to be kind of careful on that one.
Yeah, he has to make sure to keep up with the time because otherwise, once he gets low on the clock, it's even harder to defend your position that way. So he needs to make sure that he doesn't get too low on the clock. I guess what's really disturbing for him is the knight's in white's position. I mean, especially the knight now heading to b3, that head to b3 and is going to c5 now. What do you do about this? Do you play bishop e7 back? You don't really want to retreat your bishop that quickly.
No, I totally see that. It's very difficult to know what exactly to do. And also when your king is just a little bit vulnerable here, it feels like white has many opportunities to blast open the center, which I think they'll need to prepare a little bit more for, but when they get to it, it could be scary.
Yeah, black plays a move queen f7. It's a very passive move, but what else can you do here with black? You just sit and wait and hope that your opponent makes a mistake, makes a wrong pawn push, and somehow survive. So he's trying to put the pieces in better places. Maybe he wants to play rook e8 to defend the pawn on e6 and take control of the e-file in case of e takes d5, but for now, very unpleasant position for Frederick, and yeah, if he doesn't manage to draw or win this game, then he will have to deal with Armageddon.
Yeah, that is actually very difficult because anything can happen in Armageddon. We've seen some crazy Armageddon upsets. It's a completely new format, completely different than what they've been playing in the normal brackets. So I don't know. And if we take a look, can we move to the Hikaru game for his it will be his last game of the day if he manages to win it, but it seems like Matlikov has a slight advantage here, although not with time.
Yeah, Hikaru's still up on the clock, but Hikaru does have sort of a passive position. This knight on e6 is well placed, but can easily be attacked very soon by means of g4, f5, and that looks rather unpleasant for black. This bishop on b7 is also very passive, defending the pawn on c6, and you want to play c5, but as you can already guess, that's not happening because white has so many pieces pointing towards the pawn on d5, so a very passive position for Hikaru. Let's see if he managed to get out of the situation, just like he did in the last game where it was
Right
not
before,
very
yeah.
sure if he was actually going to convert that one.
And I love that move you suggested, f5. It was just played on the board. And the interesting thing is you might want to just keep up the tension. It's easy to take or try to find some immediate ideas, but I don't know. I do like knight g4 here. Maybe I'm just very interested in in these squares, the maybe the h6 square. Maybe I shouldn't be as interested in that, but it's always very tempting. And I don't know, it just seems like the king doesn't have a lot of space, the pawns are advanced. You don't have a queen, so it's a little hard to see how exactly you take advantage of all of this, but he does have the initiative, I'd say.
Yeah, and black is very stuck. I mean, those rooks on the 8th rank are not doing anything. I guess black can already start thinking about, well, actually, I want to push c5, but it's not defended anymore. There was a knight on e6 that was helping it previously. But if you move the knight back to e6, then you're not defending t5 well enough anymore to push c5. So essentially, black is stuck and just waiting for white to launch an attack. And yeah, you just have to sit and wait with black here.
That is not a position that anyone wants to be in, to have to sit and wait and just see what your opponent does, hope they mess up. That's always so uncomfortable.
Absolutely. So, yeah, let's see how Maxime will convert this into a winning position. For now, he's pushing h4, probably with the idea to play h5 and to open up that h-file, because once the h-file is open, I can see the rooks maneuver to the h-file and then checkmate on h8. So that king is stuck because of the pawn on f6, and not an easy position for Hikaru to defend.
No, absolutely not. It's gonna be, I don't know, you have to play this very precisely. Also, after a tough game where you had a a good position at some point and it just didn't go your way, it's a little tough to come back from that, but we've seen people do it plenty of times. Actually, I think that's one thing that we don't give these professional players enough credit for. Not only are they amazing players, but they're very resilient and they're very good at the psychological aspect of chess.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. So, knight heading to a6, but where is it going next? You want to try to find a good square for the knight, but it is not looking good for the knight. I think it will retreat to e6, but as I mentioned before, white is simply going to try to open up the h-file. Black plays h6. I really like this move, actually, because if you play h5 now, black will play g5, and there's not going to be any open file on the king side. So black is trying to shut things down and hope for some sort of fortress.
No, you're absolutely right. That is a really, really nice move because now it's not exactly certain how you follow up. You have to bring in all your pieces to help. But you might have to let him close it up a little bit and just take that f5 spot with your knight and call it a day, maybe scoot into d6, but you might not get that mate you want on the h-file.
Yeah. I was just checking real quick regarding the match between Fedoseev and Vidit. I only see one game and I wanted to see their second game, so hopefully we can pull that up very soon. But yeah, for now we are on this match, and the other game between Jules Musard and Alexander Grischuk, how about we take a look at that one real quick to see what's happening? Because in the winner's bracket, they drew their first match, but the second game, yeah, seems like white has a small edge here. Much more active pieces. The bishop on c4 is the one that is superior over that bishop on c8. I would say slight advantage for white, but maybe not so clear yet.
Yeah, it's a bit... Well, let's look at why black doesn't want to take any pawns. Because you get trapped. Okay, we are not taking that poison pawn. That is the most poison of poison pawns because you get absolutely trapped with bishop b3.
True. Yeah, it's a very tricky one and easy to fall for that. And then, yeah, your rook is not getting out. And we'll go back to d1. Soon. So, yeah, that's why...
I had a classical game with that.
Oh, no.
No. My opponent trapped his own rook. It was great, but it was a lot of calculation to try to get it.
Oh,
but
that's satisfying.
Yes, it was very nice. I was like, you aren't getting out anytime soon, Bishop.
Nice. It is very useful to have these tactical resources ready. It's a bit strange to move your bishop backwards, and because of that, it's not so easy to find it. But once you've seen it, it's hard to forget it.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of people think that tactics aren't as useful in these master games because you don't see these rooks getting trapped very often, besides in maybe a Fischer game. And you don't see, well, that was a bishop, but you don't see a lot of these like very simple tactics, except every single move they make is based on these tactics. For example, they might leave a pawn hanging because if they take, one of these tactics works. So it's more like everything that you're studying is still seen in these games, just with a little bit of deeper analysis. I find that very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. This game seems to be around equal. Maybe something will happen very soon, but I see a massive time scramble between Frederick Swane and Fedoseev Durarbayli. This is the losers bracket, and Fedoseev seems to be winning in this position, but where is the win? White needs to figure it out still, and has 35 seconds to do so.
And we see knight f5. Just seems like a very nice position for the knight, but I'm still not sure the follow-up. Chat, if you guys are your super geniuses, if you got your thinking hat on today, try to find the follow-up here for white. What's the best thing to do, best way to finish this off? Because it's not super easy, and I don't think Durarbayli is finding it super easy either.
Oh, now knight takes knight takes h6, the rook is defending it. So rook c6 was a very strong move by Frederick, and 15 seconds now for Fedoseev. This is so frustrating because he knows there's a win right there. But where is it? Rook takes f8, he plays a brilliant move.
And you sack, and how do you follow it up? Queen h8.
Oh,
takes,
97!
And there we go. And we just see the tactics we talked about. What a nice fork is. Now you're up a whole knight, and this will be much easier to convert. And we see it. And now this means this match is going to Armageddon because they are tied 1-1.
Wow, what a match. I mean, this was crazy. Fedoseev finding the tactical resources in Time Scramble, and he made it. So Armageddon in this match. Let's take a look at another one. We have Minlay against Morali, and in this game, so the first game ended in a draw, so this second game is very crucial. And if we quickly have a look at the material balance, white is up a pawn, but black does have a passed pawn. Now the question is that enough? Probably not.
Yeah, it's interesting because these double pawns usually don't do much, but you can literally just sack one of these pawns for the D pawn, and then you have this like monster pass pawn that nobody can get through, which is very nice, which we see.
Yeah, c4 is on the board, a4 is played, so you probably want to move the bishop back first. Maybe you even have c takes d5, because we're not afraid to lose a bishop when we're attacking the other bishop, but you'd have to calculate this, and Morali just goes for it directly.
Yeah. C takes d5. And now he has to decide, does he want to take the bishop on b3? Does he want to move his own bishop? How exactly do you play this? And Min only has 14 seconds left, so he has to play very quickly. He is known for his speed, very strong speed player, but he really shouldn't be getting so low on time.
Yeah, and bishop h3 is a move that looks very appealing to counterattack on the rook on f1, but then white would have played rook a1 and the pawn on a4 would be pinned. So that's why bishop h3 was not played. Instead, Min is trying to play passively to survive, but with those three pawns in the center of white, I am not sure about Min's drawing chances here.
Yeah, it would really take some solid play, maybe even a miracle, because those are some very, very scary pawns. I'm not exactly sure what you can do in this position.
Yeah, tough position for black, and white is just pushing the pawns. Bishop d5, preparing c6 should be lights out.
Which we see, bishop d5. And Min's time, they're both under 10 seconds. But even with this, you see this a pawn trying to make some progress. But look at this scary pawn clump. It almost looks like you could accidentally hang mate as well with this king on d8.
True. Bishop e6 final attempt, but if you want, you can just play rook a1. But rook takes e6 should work fine as well.
Yeah, and we see the promotion. Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
At least black
you still have these
push.
pawns.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still have these passed pawns.
Yeah, Min is so
and there
tricky.
Isn't really much you can do with that. Yeah. Min is very tricky, but it'll be hard to make any progress with that there. Yeah, I think we're just gonna see the resignation soon. It seems like also the Hikaru game has ended. See the results. I'll check that if you want to stay on this game.
Yep.
It ended in a draw.
Yeah.
By repetition. Yeah, a draw is as good as a loss for Matlikov, because that means Hikaru Nakamura is moving forward in the losers bracket, and unfortunately Matlikov is being sent home. But you know, it was very hard in the position that he ended up in to make any progress. So I understand the draw.
There was one moment, Jules, that there was a position where it was a draw in this endgame, which is completely crazy. Apparently in this position, black just had to move the king closer towards the pawns, and that is apparently a draw. Only king e4 and king e5 are drawn, and I have a feeling that's because the king simply gets close enough to the pawns, the white king is too far away, and you just get to capture the pawns because this rook will not be able to move. So that was a missed opportunity for Min to equalize this game, but now that he missed it, he is in losing position. White managed to get the king involved, and this should be easily winning.
Yeah, and that will be very tough. I believe this is the losers bracket, which means Min, if he cannot manage to at least draw this, he will be sent home, and Morali will be moving forward in the losers bracket.
Yeah, actually, I had this endgame with the white pieces, exactly the same with G and H pawns in classical over the board. So you would expect that it's so easy to win this. You just push the pawns forward, and at some point the king is stuck on the 8th rank, and then you checkmate on the 8th rank. But what happened instead was I managed to stalemate my opponent because there was a position on the board where the rook was trying to sacrifice everywhere, and I could not escape that rook. So I was getting checked from everywhere, and I could not escape it. So some precision is required. I learned it the hard way, but now I know one of the ways to win. But it's not a very simple one. So you'd have to.
I remember in Formentera, we were all watching your game because you were the last to finish. You were playing a grandmaster, and you had a very defensible position. I think it was what was it? It was the Philidor defense you had to do.
Yes.
But you created your own defense, your literal own defense from scratch. And because you didn't play the Philidor, the grandmaster decided to play it out with you for like an hour.
Yeah, I was so through it in that game, and for some reason, at some point, you just don't see what to do anymore. You start seeing ghosts, and you're like, oh, but what if I do this, then what happens? And that's exactly what happened in that game. And then I thought, okay, I found a way out somehow. I managed to get the draw, but yeah, it was quite something. It was it's funny because I recently studied an endgame book, so I know this by heart, but for some reason during the game it was not quite there, and I remembered something else.
No, and it was so funny because I remember we were talking with the grandmaster you were playing later, and he was like, yeah, if she just played the Philidor, I would have just drawn right there. Instead, you like missed dinner, you had to like play out for another 2 hours and time scramble, like.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it happens. And Rookend games are very tricky, and especially after like a long, tough game, anything can happen. And games are just the moment that you're tired, you have to play the end game out. So that's why you have to stay sharp and know your end games very well.
You do, and I don't know. It's much easier to look at a book and be like, oh, I know this, than to actually play it on the board. So my heart is with you on that one. I'm taking a look at the Div 3 winners bracket semifinals.
Yes.
And we have Arjun versus Dubov, who are tied 1-1. So maybe we should take a look at this position because we get this other kind of informative IQP position.
Yes, let's take a look. Yeah, so pawn on d5, another isolated queen's pawn. In this case, I really like white's position because the bishops are quite well placed of white. Bishop on b2 is doing a good job there. This bishop on f3 is attacking the pawn on d5, and black is basically just standing there, defending the pawn on d5. Maybe black should try to push the pawn to d4. But for now, it's not so easy because of a hanging pawn on b7. So the plan is with black to push d4 because a kingside attack is not going to happen whatsoever.
Absolutely, and it's just a general thought to trade your weak IQP when you can. So white's definitely going to want to control that square right below it on d4 to make sure that that trade cannot happen. So I think we're going to see some very, very solid technique here from very promising players. I am a fan of both of these players and their games. If you ever get a chance to check out any of their classical games, they're always very insane, like very crazy calculation games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's see how the players will handle this position. But for now, it's Arjun's turn. He has to decide what to do. Not so easy because once you start playing moves such as knight e2, because you want to control the square d4, put a knight there or the bishop there, then black will be able to play moves such as knight e4. And you don't want to allow that so easily. So perhaps a move such as queen d3 could be interesting, or simply queen d2 to get the rook, the other rook, in as well on d1. But instead he goes for e4. Wow.
Letting him trade off it. Although I think it's not, yeah, I think you still have a lot of advantages with these open files. So Dubov has to make a difficult choice here. Someone asked, are these best of two? The loser's bracket is best of two, but this is the winner's bracket, so this is best of four. They are tied right now. So they still have, I think, a game if one of them loses, but you definitely want to be in the position where you can take a draw and still win the match. So I think this is still a very critical match. Very critical game.
No, for sure. And it does seems to be the case that White is trying to simplify, which is really interesting. It's uncommon for White to try to trade off that pawn on d5. But I guess it makes sense if you look at it from the perspective that White has a pair of bishops. Why not? We want to open the position and make the bishops shine even more. So I guess that is the reasoning why e4 is played. And now it's Dubov's turn to decide what to do. Will he take on e4, or maybe he decides to play d4?
It definitely is going to be an interesting decision. While we are waiting for that, I am going to go get a coffee, which is outside my door. So I will be right back.
Go ahead, of course.
Very early.
No worries at all. So yeah, we're going to take a look let's see which one we're going to take a look at. Let me first update you guys on the losers bracket of Division 3. So Alexander Bortnik managed to win against Georg Meyer 2-0, so pretty convincing win, it looks like. And that means that Georg Meyer is out. And we also have David Paravian did not make it against Jaime Santos Latasa, so David Paravian is also out. And finally, we actually had an Armenian derby here, Shan Sargsyan versus Aram Hakobian. So they faced each other, and they did not go for quick draws to head into Armageddon. No, they fought until the very end, and Shant was the one that won the match. So that means that Aram Hakobian is out, and yeah, those seem to be very exciting results. And I'm curious to see who will survive the losers bracket, because remember, if you lose in the losers bracket, you are actually out of the tournament. So it's really important to keep winning.
Never coming back.
Never coming back, indeed. Maybe in the next event, but not in the next few days. So yeah, the losers bracket of Division 3 is already over. I'm curious to see what will happen in the next losers bracket matches, as they will start as soon as the winners bracket matches will end.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the Armageddon bids for D2. Just want to get that up for us.
Let's take a look.
I do not think we know, but I do know there is Armageddon happening between Sane and Durarbayli.
Right. Let me check real quick. It looks like a very high bid. So it says that 1 minute and 45 seconds was spent on move 1, so 8 minutes and 15 seconds, something like this.
Ah. Or maybe he just decided to take a bathroom break. I don't know. Could be either one.
Could be either way. But it seems like Fredrik Swane was happy to take the white pieces. And let's see what's happening in this position, because material-wise it's even, but it's clear that white is the one fighting for a win here with the activity of the pieces they have here. Black has a weak king, the rook on a8. I'm not sure why it is still there. It just did not manage to get out just yet. And I guess black did not have the time to get the rook out. So this is why white should be much better. And yeah, Fredrik has to find a way to convert this, because he has to win this game within 3 minutes.
Yeah, and it was an interesting choice not to take that pawn. I'm still wondering why exactly, but maybe you just have a stronger follow-up.
Yeah, interesting. F3 is very appealing, but there's actually a trick here, I guess. I was thinking what happens after queen takes f3, but I guess you just play queen e6 and then go for this typical checkmate on the back rank. Sometimes you have tactics where you try to get rid of that piece that is pinning your other piece, but I don't see a way to get rid of the rook properly, so Yeah, queen takes f3 is not a move, but I can definitely see people fall for that tactic.
No, I can as well. It's very it's very difficult to see how exactly to follow this up. And if I'm looking at this right, does white have less time than black right now?
True. Wait a second. It just hit me because White was the one that started with 10 minutes. So White spent a lot of time in the middle game, which is very surprising because White is the one that needs to win.
Absolutely. And even though white has a much better position here, I think 2 minutes time difference could decide. You never want to be in the position where you're in an Armageddon game and you have a great position and then you're down to 10 seconds and have to pre-move all your moves. You have no increment, no way to get any of this time back.
Yeah, and by playing rook c7, now Fedoseev is able to play queen takes f3. Remember the line that I was mentioning? You don't have queen e6 check anymore. You don't have any attack on the 8th rank anymore. The only trick you have here is rook takes g7, rook takes, queen takes, king takes, and pawn takes f3. This way, you get rid of that queen on f3, but at what cost? Because you don't really have anything to play for anymore. It's as draw as it can get. So this way, if the position ends this way, then Fedoseev has a very easy draw here for here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would just be that would be pretty awful for Swanee, who had a much better position just a few moves ago.
Yeah, and now Fedoseev is coming back as he plays rook f8, involving the rook finally in the game, but now white has to play very passively. Plays queen e1, defending that f2 square, and I am very concerned for Fredrik Swanee here.
Yes, it just shows like a few moves can really make a difference. You have to be so sharp and just so on it for every single move because now this position is very uncomfortable. He has to fight for a win down on time. Down on time.
Yeah, if the clocks were reversed, I could still see a chance for Fredrik, but now it's his chances are not looking great whatsoever, and Fedoseev just wants to trade pieces, and he's happy to take the draw.
Absolutely. Do we have any believers in Swanee in the chat here? Because it would take a miracle, I think, to be able to completely hold this off. I mean, maybe if you could pick off a few pawns, but now they're forced to kind of just defend from mate perpetually.
Yeah, the queen just can't leave from e1. As soon as you leave, you face queen f1 checkmate, and there's just no way to survive this because, yeah, how does the king get out? It's really hard to see.
No, it is very difficult to see. So I am gonna be taking a look. Maybe we have the third game actually of Grischuk versus Musard. Do we want to take a look?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look because Grischuk managed to win game 2. Now we're in game 3, and if Grischuk manages to win this game, he will win the match. So this is a very important game, and yeah, I see a king on e2, and I'm already concerned for Jules here.
Maybe they like their kings on e2. You never know. I mean, neither of the kings are very, very well defended right now. It looks like a queen trade might happen, but it's hard to see which king exactly is better off because if you do go for that kingside castle, if you're Grisha, you might have to worry about some sort of h-file attack, although with that g-pawn actually I think is defending pretty well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. It's not easy for white to launch an attack. I guess for the time being, black is not in a rush to castle because similarly you could go for king e7. But okay, white does have this bishop on e1, so you may want to be a little careful with that. But in case you short castle with black, then yeah, it's not easy to see how white can sort of punish this. And even though you can push the pawn to h5, black can simply play g5, and that should be completely fine.
Yeah, it should be completely fine, but I don't know. You just have to be so careful here. Also, look at the time difference. 3 minutes to 7 minutes. This is a game with increment, which means it's not as important as in the Armageddon games to keep up on time, but still you have to be a little cautious.
Yeah. I mean, we know Grischuk, he is a time trouble addict, and this is This is very normal for him, but I would still be very concerned indeed. He needs to, well, he doesn't have to win this game, but ideally he wins this game and finishes the match right there, but his chances are not looking the greatest right now. A lot of things need to change for him to have winning chances in this game.
Also, it looks like in the losers bracket round 2 match with Aronian versus Kramnik, it has gone to Armageddon.
Ooh, let's see, because Aronian, Aronian's playing with the black pieces, is down 2 minutes on the clock. But yeah, it's still the early stage of the game, and not much has happened so far. It sort of looks like there is a reversed Sicilian here.
And it looks like he bid around 7 minutes 30 seconds or something to get the black pieces.
Right.
So he really wants to be able to go for a draw here.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, the draws are pretty good, but yeah, those that take the white pieces are usually very optimistic, and I guess it's fair to think that a decisive result will happen anyway, so why not take the white pieces with more time? But yeah.
That's not always the case though, and sometimes these decisive results come from someone just trying to push because they know they can't draw.
It's true.
So it's not always easy to know how to proceed here. And Levon Aronian, we even had this position where I think he played with the black pieces in the last Armageddon match he was in. He's a very solid player. It's hard to make a lot of progress if he wants to draw.
Yeah. It's not easy, and that's why this format is so exciting, because what do you pick? Do you want to play with the white pieces or do you go for the black pieces? So
pick your fighter.
yeah, pick your fighter and hope for the best.
Absolutely. And we see h4, which is aggressive. I mean, maybe it could just be strengthening the position, but it could also be aiming for h5. I am not exactly sure, but what do you think? What do you think Kramnik is going for here?
I guess he's also trying to stop knight g5 in case black was thinking of playing this move. But yeah, it's always useful to play such moves, and if you're thinking of whether to play h3 or h4, might as well play h4, just in case you want to gain some space on the king side. The king can go to h2, maybe the knight goes to h2 to trade off those bishops, the light squared bishops. But for now, the players are shuffling their pieces, trying to find a way to make progress over here. I have a feeling that white maybe wants to aim for queen a1, as white plays the move c4, and perhaps after queen a1, attack that pawn on e5.
That makes a lot of sense. And I do like the move c4, opening up that bishop. Now you have a direct line of attack there. Let's see. It seems like what was the last move? The last move was bishop takes. Maybe I spoke too soon on c4, because now we just saw the knight hop into b4, which means we're having some issues defending this d3 pawn. How exactly do you defend this d3 pawn?
Yeah, I guess knight f1 seems like a very reasonable option, so you open up the rook towards that pawn to defend. I guess another reasonable option was maybe to... I want to push d4 for some reason. Just give up that pawn, and you can always capture the pawn on b7 at some point. Maybe not immediately, because as bishop takes b7, there's c6, and your bishop is trapped. So you have to be a bit careful about with that. But yeah, it's not easy to defend this pawn, and that's why knight f1 seems to be the very logical approach. But turns out that I mean, at least a computer is not happy with this move whatsoever.
You can't get mated with your knight on f1.
Yeah, it's a great defensive piece. Why not?
But in all seriousness, yes, the whole point is you do want to make some sort of very, very solid attack, and it's getting more and more difficult. This almost looks like a kind of like a King's Indian type vibe. I won't say structure, but vibe, where you have all the pieces on the king side for black, and you're kind of aiming towards white's a little bit vulnerable king side.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if we see g5 happen very soon. preparing g4, f4, and then h pawn joins as well, perhaps. So, really rough position for white. Not sure how Kramnik can get out of this, but he does have more time on the clock, which can work in his favor at some point.
Absolutely, but finding the right moves to create a little bit of counterplay in this position would be very difficult. How do you create counterplay in this position? If you're a Kramnik, what is your best way to create some sort of defense? Because if you don't do anything, it's not one of those positions where you can just passively wait on Anna-Maja. Like, you can't just passively wait, otherwise you'll get absolutely just, I don't know, just stormed.
yeah, exactly. You get absolutely obliterated here if you don't do anything, but yeah, hard to say what white can actually do here. You want to play queen a1, but then you face knight c2. So perhaps a good move to start with could be rook e2 to stop any sort of knight infiltration. And maybe you have to consider defending the pawn on d3 one more time. So maybe you want to put the rook on d2, play queen a1, but then how do you attack the pawn e5 one more time? And this is the problem with white's position. There's very little harmony in the position. All the pieces have to defend something, and that's why they cannot switch to attack here.
Yeah, it's and you don't want to let the time even out. I mean, you still have 2 minutes advantage if you're white. But in these positions, the positions where you're worse are the hardest to play time-wise. The positions where you're dead lost, you can just kind of move immediately and hope your opponent blunders. But the positions where you're just worse and you have to find a way to defend, we were talking about that yesterday. It's not very easy. Oh, well, it seems like we have a little bit of counterplay with...
We missed a few moves. All of a sudden, they were making some moves.
All of a sudden, H takes. Both of the kings are wide open now. Both of the kings are absolutely wide open now. And I guess that takes away the attack a little bit.
Ooh, Levon just blundered the pawn on e5, and because of that, I guess he's trying to launch an attack, but white seems to be coming back as white can play d4, take control of the center, and as soon as the position opens up, all the pieces of white will get more active. So this is a big miss by Levon, who now has to suffer in this position, being down a pawn, and yeah, this knight on b4, previously very strong piece, but now that the pawn from d3 is gone to d4, the knight is not doing anything anymore over there. It's pretty much out of the game for now, and that's why I think white has the better chances all of a sudden.
Yeah, now it seems like black's pieces aren't as harmonious. There are a lot of targets as well in black's king side, the h pawn. I mean, as more pieces get taken off the board, white's pieces will be able to roam free a little bit more than they have before.
Yeah, for now, this light squared bishop is not the greatest. A lot of the pawns are on light squares of black, so you're facing those pawns, unable to capture them. But as I said, the knight on b4 is also out of the game, and we will need to see this knight on h2 still back in action. And once that knight gets involved, things may get very tricky for black.
All right, we see bishop f1 here, trying to bring this bishop back into the game. There are some ideas, maybe with like a c4, and if they give you some time, maybe a bishop c4, just actually getting that bishop active at all. But is it too slow? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, because this is dropping the pawn on e5 right away. Queen g7 check played as well, and black just captures the pawn on e5, and things seem to be completely fine for black now.
I'm wondering if maybe there was some sort of tactic that was spotted with queen d8 check, but it seems like you have to be a little bit careful here now that the queen's infiltrated the king side. Kramnik does not want to allow any sort of mating tactic.
Yeah, I mean, we can see a king march all the way up to h5, and white cannot really do much. The queen is working on its own here of white, and this bishop is not involved in anything because it's dominated by this knight on f4. The knight is out of the game as well. As soon as you move the knight, you run into some queen e4 issues here. So, yeah, I like black's position. It should be holdable for white, but you'd have to be really accurate here. And because of that, I think black has good practical chances.
What do you think, chat? Who do you think is going to take home this Armageddon in Levon Aronian versus Kramnik? It's been a really wild game. We've seen back and forth both ways. Aronian was absolutely dominating, then Kramnik had the better position, and now it's equal. And the time is almost equalized as well. That's a big factor.
Wow, Kramnik plays move h5, sacrificing the pawn, allowing black to capture, but if black captures the pawn with the king, there's queen of 7 and the checks continue. So you have to think twice at least about capturing that pawn. Make sure that you don't get checkmated all of a sudden as you get closer to the white pieces. But I guess you can still take with the black knight.
It is just very scary what you need to calculate, which is why we see his time ticking down. He is now almost a minute behind, over a minute behind, which you have to be a little careful here with that time management. But it is a very critical decision. He wants to know if he can take that piece, where he should move his king. And we see king f6.
Okay. He does not believe in it. He does not believe in it, but maybe this is also a way to distract the queen, because if the queen is trying to capture that pawn on h6, maybe black has some chances to attack the king on h1, because you still have the queen e4 idea on your radar, and if white is not careful, some tactical issues may arise.
Absolutely, and not only that, you have to be very, very careful if you're white to not allow any sort of perpetual. You have to be on the lookout for that, because a perpetual will score the win for black, who has draw odds. So just another thing to be able to calculate.
Yeah, and now, Jules, I'm actually getting really concerned about Levon's clock. He is down to 1 minute and 20 seconds, and since this is Armageddon, he doesn't have increments, so he needs to play fast.
Absolutely, you need to leave at least 20 seconds on your clock just to finish the game, let alone play it accurately. It's so hard without increment, especially in a lot of these big tournaments. In the previous games they've been playing in this tournament, in the CrunchLabs Masters, they've had increment. So this is a big switch up. They really have to adjust their mindset with that. It's not that easy.
No, and the knight jumps to c2, so Levon is really trying to get all the pieces involved, and yeah, he knows if white pushes too much and black manages to get the pieces involved, then there's nothing left for Vladimir to repeat, and that is in favor of Levon. So yeah, we'll have to see if Vladimir manages to get something out of this position, but he needs a few more moves to make progress with the pawn on h5.
That is very scary, absolutely. A few more moves which black can use, Aronian can use to set up some sort of perpetual, to set up a mating threat. But we see the try. I think this is a very, very good try with h6. You don't really have any other options. You need your knight and your bishop on f1 to be defending this attack.
Wow, Levon plays the move knight d4, which is apparently the best move in the position. And the idea is that black wants to play knight de2. If white carelessly pushes the pawn to h7, you play knight e2, bishop takes e2, which is forced, and queen g2 checkmate. So there's nothing left other than giving checks until the game's over, because how do you defend against knight e2?
That is very, very scary. And I think Vladimir Kramnik is going to take his time to think in this position to try to avoid what you just said, but it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
How exactly do you do that?
I guess the queen is now at least covering the square g2, but white plays h7, and there is a different checkmate on the board, missed by Levon. He missed it. Oh my goodness, I believe he had to play. Was there some queen b1, or was it maybe knight h3? Yeah, I think there was knight h3. King of 1, knight queen h1. Oh my goodness, he completely missed it, and he still had 40 seconds on his clock.
He completely missed, and that means white is completely winning now. There's very little way to stop that promotion. There are still a lot of traps that white can fall into, so Kramnik has to be very careful. But if he plays this well, he will absolutely win this game. Look at that move.
Wow.
Look at that sacrifice. Now you're just up a piece. That is insane.
Levon must be fuming right now, especially once he realizes probably after the game, he'll realize that he was completely winning in this position.
A mate in 2.
Knight h3. The king can only go to f1, and queen h1 is checkmate on the next move. This is a devastating sequence of events for Levon, who was in a completely winning position.
And it almost feels like it was just an instant move. Oh, it's so hard to see there when you have 20 seconds on your clock, no increment. That is why time is so important. But exactly, you could try to go for some sort of perpet here, but it becomes so much more difficult when you're down a piece.
Yeah, I mean, queen f3, it's really easy for white to win this position, and if not winning on the board, you can easily flag your opponent, as Vladimir is up to 1 minute on the clock and Levon only has 18 seconds left. So yeah, I don't think Levon will get another chance like the way he had a few moves ago. But yeah, this is absolutely insane. And even grandmasters at this level of this high caliber, they can still make these mistakes so easily. So don't be too discouraged if you missed a checkmate recently, because it even happens at this very level.
Everyone's a grandmaster.
We all have it in us.
We all have it in us to make the same blunders. Yeah, and we still see him fighting it out, but here it's just all the pieces are dwindling. White is perfectly happy with a queen trade, and we see it. Vladimir Kramnik has won. Levon Aronian is pushed out of the losers bracket in a crazy game where both players were winning and losing at multiple different times.
What a crazy match, and what a sad way for Levon to go down. Vladimir Kramnik manages to win this game. He advances to the next match in the losers bracket, but for Levon, it's over. He is out of the tournament, and what a match. This was absolutely crazy.
And welcome, Raiders. Thank you, Agnes, for the raid. If we can shout her out in my chat, thank you so much. You just came in at a crazy moment where we saw this insane back and forth game where Levon Aronian missed a mate in 3 last second and blundered the game to Vladimir Kramnik, who is moving on in the losers bracket. Just an absolute insane finish to that game. I think we got very lucky to be looking at that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a thriller of a match, and we as the audience get spoiled every single time. So yeah, that's a good thing about not playing. You get to see others suffer, and yeah, you get reminded that everyone makes mistakes, and even
Everybody
grandmasters, yeah, they just miss checkmates as well.
I'm talking about. Absolutely, they're one of us.
They're one of us. They're not immortal as we may think they are.
Yeah, it's always nice to see that. Well, not for them, but it is always nice to see exactly how certain things can get blundered under time pressure when there's no increment. It just becomes even more important to really hold it out. I'm just trying to check on the score between... I see we have our final game between Arjun and Dubov. Maybe it is worth taking a look at that.
Yep, let's take a look. This is Division 3. The players are tied in this match. And this game may decide the match, because Arjun has an interesting position here, because White's pieces are all on the mostly on the first 2 ranks. Seems to be pushed back quite a bit, and at the same time, I see the activity in Black's position, but at the same time, you see those 2 knights are not doing so much just yet. The bishop on c8 is out of the game for now. So I'm curious to see how Arjun can make progress here. He starts with b6, which is a good attempt because bishop a6 is very much desired here. Materially-wise, it's even, but the clock situation is concerning for Dubov.
And literally everything is hanging. Anna-Maja, this is such an Arjun versus Dubov position. Like, everything's hanging, no kingside safety, huge attacks, open files. Like, this is where they both thrive, which is why I really wanted to check out this match. I think it's very interesting to see 2 players who really love the same kind of crazy situations.
Yeah, true. And The knight is on d3 pinned now, so cannot really move that one very easily. It's a really crazy position, and because of the fact that because of the pawn structure in the center, the black king is more than safe in the center, is not looking to move at all for the time being, and that's why Arjun went for this move rook a4 quite some time ago, to involve the rook in a different way. And the other rook can get involved in the game by playing rook g8, and yeah, the h-pawn can start moving forward as well to launch an attack. So yeah, very exciting position.
And exactly, they love launching their attacks here. And I was just looking, the time is 5 minutes to 1 minute. That is a little bit of an insane time difference here, especially in such a critical game. But I don't know. I've seen it both ways. It's a little difficult to make progress, and you have to be very, very careful if you're on both sides.
Yeah, White is trying to create some chances on the f file, plays f5. But this does weaken the pawn on e5. I have a feeling that black can just take the knight off the board, and okay, I guess you have to be a little careful here. So I'll quickly show the line that I'm talking about, because there are so many tactical nuances here. What if black plays bishop takes d3, bishop takes d3, and you can't just take the pawn on e5, because as the bishop takes, knight takes, there may be some issues with bishop b5 check. There's a rook hanging there. Apparently there is some way for black to survive, which is just completely crazy. But there are some loose pieces here that you have to keep an eye on. So you can't take the pawn on e5 that easily, but I definitely see some good chances here for black after the move f5. It's one of those moves that look really scary. It may look like there's an attack going on, attack on e6, and the f-file opens up towards the king. It's oftentimes done in these kind of structures, but sometimes it's okay to allow it and just try to defend the squares where your opponent is infiltrating. So yeah, that's why you want to try to get your knight to e5.
No, look at that. It's very interesting. I really like what you were analyzing there. But it's just a very, very difficult position, which means it can go to either person. I'm wondering in chat, which one do you think is going to win this? I think honestly, it's not one of those very, very easy, simple cut answers, but I'm curious to see whose side you are on here. I'm a little worried about Dubov's time as well in this.
Yeah, and now after g3, white is still somewhat surviving, but the king is so exposed, it doesn't feel safe at all. Bishop can give a check on c5, and the king would have to hide in the corner, but it doesn't feel safe at all. Arjun goes for h4 first, attacking that pawn on g3, and putting more pressure on that one. But yeah, the position is very double-edged. Anything can still happen, but indeed, Dubov's time is concerning, and it will come down to the final seconds.
And Fly You Fools just said, is Hikaru still in this? Yes, he won his loser's bracket today, which means he will be moving on in the loser's bracket tomorrow. So has not been kicked out of the competition just yet, with some really, really strong games. And yeah, we'll see how that goes tomorrow.
Queen h7 on the board. What is the idea behind this? Because queen f7 check, the king will just run away. And if rook f7, white just doesn't have time for this at all. Black plays h takes g3. The threat is g takes h2, so you have to do something about this. And slowly but surely, black will be able to convert this pretty easily. So this seems to be completely lost for Dubov.
Are you an Arjun believer right now?
I guess it's safe to say so. I have very little faith in Dubov's position.
Yeah, it just seemed to be looking worse and worse as this attack is just getting absolutely out of control. And you see Dubov thinking, using all of his time down to 30 seconds. They do have increment in this exact game, but I don't think it will be enough to save him here.
Yeah, what do you do? It's even hard to make a move here because you're about to get checkmated. Okay, black plays king d8 now. And which move do you make now? Queen f3 is trying to hold the position together, because if you take now on h2, king h1, and for now, white is surviving. So there must be a different move. I would like to vote for bishop c5 first.
Which we see. Bishop c5, king moves to g2, take, and it looks like the mate is inevitable, which they both see right away because, you know. So that means Arjun Erigaisi is moving on and Dubov will be sent to the losers bracket.
What a match.
What a nice finish.
Yeah, it came down to the very last game, and what a way to finish the match for Arjun. I mean, that attack was just so convincing, and Dubov was not able to recover from that poor position. So Dubov will go down to the losers bracket indeed. We have one more match going on in the winners bracket of Division 3. So it is between David Anton Guyaro and Evgeny Alexeyev. So they're in their fourth game already. And David
Also,
Anton is a point ahead.
Bracket. Div 2 is playing losers bracket as well. And there's still winners bracket semifinals there as well.
Awesome. Awesome. This match may end very soon because both players are down to 30 seconds, 1 minute on the clock. And with a draw, David Anton will go to the final match in the winners of bracket.
Let's take a look here. So he just needs a draw to survive to the final match. If white wins, I'm just taking a look at the quick score. I think that is correct. Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, David Anton is up a full point, yeah.
Wow, okay, so you just need to play it very carefully, but they're both under 40 seconds. Do you think that will make a difference in this match?
Ooh, I think so, yeah. It feels like a position where you like need much more time for because there's so much that can still happen. It's quite an imbalanced position. White has a pair of bishops, but black has a pair of knights, and this can cause for a lot of difficulties for both sides. So I think anything can still happen, and especially when we get lower on the clock, some craziness may happen. So I'm here for it.
Some craziness may occur. And we see B takes A5 here. And especially in a position like this, which may look a little bit drawish, when you're very low on time, decisive results are much more likely. That's an interesting little outpost there, knight B3.
Yeah, and you cannot really play around that knight very well because you basically have to abandon the queen side altogether and focus on the king side.
Yeah, and the king e6 move looked very natural, making the king a lot more active. You also have to be careful not to get your king in any shenanigans, but those knights are coming in. These knights are coming in.
Yeah, the pawn on b7 is hanging now, but white did not capture it. That seems to have been a free pawn. Nobody wants to take the pawn. Nope.
Maybe they're a little scared there, especially with 6 seconds on your clock, 10 seconds. It's all, they're completely evening out time, and they're both under 10 seconds right now.
Oh, this is getting so exciting.
I was so worried he wasn't looking at his time there. And 2 seconds, 1 second, they just have to make moves incredibly quickly. H5, goodness. Just a very simple pawn push, but we do not see that yet. No one wants to get checkmated.
E4. Oh, that looks awful. It makes sense because black was forced to play f5, give up the pawn. I mean, the eval bar is on a field day right now. This is madness, but that's what I was talking about. The position is just so, there's so many opportunities for both sides and anything can still happen, but it seems like white is winning this game because the king on f6 is just stuck and it's really difficult for black to survive this.
Yeah, you have to absolutely not only survive this, stop the pawn promotion, you have to, I don't know, have some sort of mating threats, which we don't see. And here we go.
Mate is on the board. What a game. And Alexey manages to tie the score. So we will see this match also heading into Armageddon.
Yes, we will. And we've been seeing so many Armageddons. So we're just getting more and more blessed with all of these fantastic Armageddons coming out.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely. Should we go to winners bracket? I think there are only 2 more games remaining in the Div 2.
Yeah, I guess Division 2 already started with the losers bracket. At least the game between Hikaru and Fedoseev has started already. But let's take a look at the winners bracket match between Jules and Alexander Grischuk because they're in their 4th game. the match score is tied, so whoever wins this game will advance to the next round.
Absolutely. And this has been an absolutely hard-fought match. And I think they both want a decisive score. Neither of them really want to go to Armageddon right now and take that risk. So we're going to see some fighting. It's also even time. They're both almost under a minute.
That's crazy. 1 minute for both. Bishop b7, which turns out to be a losing move, but apparently it was not. The position is not so simple to punish such a move. I mean, it's such a developing move. I guess maybe rook c5 was interesting to play to get that queen away. Rook d7, what do you play here with black? Let's take a look. Because it seems like black is losing that bishop, so it's fair to play rook d7. The computer thinks otherwise. Oh, rook b8.
Threatening the queen, takes, and you get yourself a trade. And now you have a rook endgame. Now you have a rook endgame, but it looks like white's rooks are slightly more active, which is nice. But you also have this kind of questionable pawn structure on the king side for white, for Grischuk.
Yeah, for now it's still fine because it's hard for black to attack those pawns. But in the long run, in the very far rook endgame, this can be a problem. As soon as the play will be on both sides of the board, then things may get very tricky as those pawns on the king side are very weak, as you mentioned. So long-term issues, but for now, white is still fine.
And Grischuk, he has a chance right now. He can defend with d2, or he can try to move his knight to an attacking position, c5 if bishop takes that pawn, which we see right now. If bishop takes f3, your a6 pawn is falling, I believe, which, or e6 actually, that also makes a lot of sense, a nice central pawn. Also, the a6 pawn is still incredibly weak. This looks to be heading in white's favor, but still anyone's game.
Yeah, I mean, black is in trouble here already, because if you play rook f6, you allow moves such as rook c8 check, and then black has difficult time to save the king over there. Doesn't really have a lot of safe squares, so that knight is quite a monster. Really difficult to defend against, and I think this is simply allowing f3 now.
Yeah, f3, bishop's forced to move to I was looking at what happens if h3, but I think your bishop might get trapped once the king moves in, and the king wants to be more active anyway.
I wanted to take the pawn on f5, but apparently king f2 was the best move in the position. That pawn on f5 is not going anywhere and can now be captured as well.
Just very nice patience. And look at all these outposts being made for these knights.
Rook c7 now, simply entering the 7th rank.
How do you defend that pawn?
I guess bishop f7 still, but something feels wrong. I mean, there's no way you can survive facing 2 rooks on the 7th rank and a knight. This. And that's over.
This might be a sad end for a resident Frenchman here, as Grischuk is absolutely taking control of this position. It's very hard to see what to do.
Yeah, this seems to be over. Don't flag.
Oh, that's scary. You should not resign when your opponent has 5 seconds on the clock. Anything can happen, but also he is the side with the knight, and the knights are so scary in these time trouble situations. Just absolutely keeping control. This is just monster play by Grischuk.
Yeah, he played super well here, and he is the winner of this match. He wins the match barely, with the minimal difference, but very convincing way in this game with that strong knight and the rooks on the 7th rank. He showed class in this game, and he takes down Jules Moussard, who is now going to the losers bracket.
Yes, that is true. My namesake, he was named after me, by the way, not the other way around.
I would 100% believe
you. His mom called me up.
Yeah.
His mom called me up and he was like, "Hey, is it cool if I name my son after you?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, Jules Moussard's mom. Like, that's super normal. You should do that." And that's how it happened. So he is going down to the losers bracket, unfortunately, but he still has some fight left in him, and he will be playing some additional games. So we will keep track of that one. Meanwhile, we have some action going on in the Hikaru game, the first losers bracket game against Durarbayli.
Yeah, and I'm tuning in this game, but just to quickly update the audience, the match between Vladimir Fedoseev and Vidit in the winners bracket has ended in a 2-2 tie. So that match is heading to an Armageddon. So we are not sure yet who Alexander Grischuk will be facing in the winners final tomorrow. So we're waiting for that game to start just yet. But the losers bracket of Division 2 has started now, and Hikaru's game is already going on for some time, but he seems to be doing a great job in the first game.
Absolutely. And someone asked, how have you ascribed a 2664 rating to Grischuk? These are all rapid ratings, I believe, because this is a rapid game that is being played.
Right.
So you can't always, the classical ratings are going to look a little bit different. And a lot of these players don't play a lot of rapid tournaments, some do. So it's hard just to ascribe it based on rating alone.
Yeah, and Vasif flags in this game. I think it was already a very tough position, so I think maybe he was unsure what to do anymore, and this was a sort of a way to resign as well. He was already very low on the clock anyway. So Hikaru takes the first win in this match, and if Hikaru manages to draw the next game, he will proceed in the next round, and he tries to survive the losers bracket.
Meanwhile, the second losers bracket game between Karthikeyan and Kramnik has begun. And this is a very similar situation. They're both playing very quickly to absolute speedsters. And we'll have to see what happens here, but this is a very important game to see who gets to move on and who is eliminated from the losers bracket.
Yeah, so let's see. Kramnik so far has been doing an amazing job surviving the losers bracket. He has had some really tough matches, but every single time he managed to survive, and yeah, Morali has also made it this far, so I'm really curious to see who will go down in this match. But yeah, so far looking good early on for Vladimir, who is playing really quickly. He seems to know his theory quite well. Like, I guess as a former world champion, that is quite expected.
Yeah, it's very it's very hard to get someone out of book on theory here, but I'm pretty sure he does know his stuff.
We are getting word in the chat that Indian GM, I'm guessing it's about Morali, is playing an event in it's about some of the other plays, I guess. So some of the players are playing in classical overboard tournaments, which is crazy that they find the time to still play online after their games. It's about Morali. Really? Okay.
That's so tough. Imagine playing a classical game and then going home and then you're like, oh, time to play Hikaru, time to play Kramnik. It's just so difficult. I don't know how they have time for all this chess, but we've been saying about this before. They'll finish these tournaments and just play Blitz all night. So you really see that they love it.
They're very dedicated, and you don't get the chance often to face such high-level players, and at the stakes, I mean, there's so much to fight for. The prize fund is insane.
Very high prize fund, yeah.
Yeah, the players are fighting for the prizes, of course.
They're fighting for a prize. They're fighting for a chance for bragging rights, for Twitter rights.
Yep, absolutely.
All of the above. So yes, let's take a look here. I'm very excited for this game to get out of theory, but that's what you get when you play some of these openings, especially if you think you know theory better than your opponent. It makes a lot of sense to go into these heavy theory openings, which is always very, very interesting. We also have a final game in the winners bracket semifinals with Vidit against Fedoseev. Wow, this might be Armageddon, actually. Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, I quickly want to take a look at the game between Fedoseev and Vidit Gujarati. So this is the Armageddon game, and how low did Vidit go that he's down so much on the clock already? I think he went down to 7 minutes and 45 seconds, something like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, 7 minutes and 45 seconds, and then he's been taking a little bit of his time as well. You know, this is not the worst time difference we've seen so far in this tournament, but it's important to note that they do not have increment. He does not want to get into a speed scramble. So, you know, but this seems like a relatively I won't say simple position because there's still so much play in it, but it is a little calmer than say the Aragaisi Dubov position we were looking at earlier.
Yeah, this is a very peaceful position. This is exactly what Vidit wants, right? He has the draw out, so if he just keeps the position closed and doesn't do anything too crazy, he can easily survive this. So it's on white to prove that there are some chances here in the position, and he needs to try to complicate matters.
Yeah, he needs to keep up the pressure. It's very difficult. I wonder what opening this came out of, though. That's what I'm trying to look at right now. I'm wondering if there was a what drawish opening we're seeing. Okay, let's
Array
see. Well, no, actually, okay. To be fair, it's not an extremely drawish opening, except we're just trading off all of the pieces. Absolutely every single piece has been traded off. So I think Vidit's very happy with this. I think he's gonna, take a snack, take a bite of food, take a nap, come back. He'll still have his position, his slightly better end game. What can you do?
Yeah, I see some confusion in the chat about Hikaru. So Hikaru is still playing. He is in the losers bracket, but he is facing Fedoseev Durarbayli and not Vladimir Kramnik. So I guess if Hikaru wins his match as well as Vladimir Kramnik, then they might face each other tomorrow in the losers bracket final. So, or this, I think it's the semi-final first. So they might face each other, but I'd have to double check the bracket for that. But yeah, he's playing in Division 2, and he's in his second game right now against Fedoseev, and his chances of advancing are looking good.
Yes, D2 and D3 also have losers brackets, which are going on, which is why we have so many exciting games. There are so many comebacks. You can get knocked out and still be in it temporarily. And we're seeing that fighting spirit from all of our losers bracket players today.
Yeah, so in this game between Fedoseev and Vidit, I like what Vidit is trying to do here. I mean, I was saying that he can just stand still and not do anything, but he is trying to go for some winning chances here. He played e4, he's attacking the pawn on d3, and he may be going for the pawn here. He may want to capture that pawn on d3.
When you can draw, why not win?
Yeah.
And we've seen that mistake made previous times in this tournament where someone will play too passively, going for the draw with one of these draw odds games, and then the tide will end up switching out of their favor. So keeping on the pressure is a very good way to play, but it is a very principled player, and we're really seeing that in action here.
Yes, so still 2 minutes down for Vidit, but these kind of positions are not super complicated. It's not super sharp. There are some tactics, but they're not very difficult, especially when it's 2 rooks versus queen now, and Vidit also has the extra pawn, so his chances are looking great. At least an extra pawn on the queen side, because he can create a passed pawn now, but not a super complicated position, so he will not need so much time to play the next 2 moves.
And if Vidit wins this one, he will be moving on to the winners bracket finals, I believe, tomorrow.
Yep. And he will be facing Grischuk over there.
Yeah, and while we wait for that, I think we should take a look, if you are not opposed to the Kramnik Karthikeyan game, because we are on, what is this, game 1 or 2? Game 1.
Game 1,
the
yes.
losers bracket.
Of course, let's take a look, because there is some action happening here. Vladimir is down to 6 minutes. Okay, this is not an Armageddon game, so we have to change the mindset. The time difference is very small, but Black's position looks quite cramped. I'm not sure what to make of it. I mean, the rook on b8 is hanging, and if you play rook b7, you face bishop a6, so it seems as if Morali is losing material no matter what.
Yeah, it does look very, very uncomfortable here. It's not really sure what exactly to do. You could try to target any of the weak pawns. You could try to create some counterplay, but all of the pieces are a little bit, well, stuck. Stuck's a good way to put it. It's hard to see where you want to generate counterplay, which he's thinking about now, which is why he's using his time. Karthikeyan's using his time, really trying to figure out how he can pose the most threats.
Yeah, not an easy task. I mean, you have this black dark squared bishop of black on g7, but Yeah, it has this nice vision towards that pawn on c3, but other than that, it's not really doing much. And at the same time, if anything, white can always play bishop d4 and stop that bishop on g7 altogether. So
That's
I'm not
true.
liking black's chances here to try to come back, but perhaps Morali can find a way to figure things out.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that and see what he is able to do. In the meantime, we have the final game also between Hikaru and Durarbayli. Hikaru won the first game, meaning he only needs a draw to complete his victory match here.
Yes, and his chances are looking great as he has two minor pieces traded for the rook, but white does have some pawns. But those pawns are not going anywhere just yet. The pawn on b5 does not really want to move for the time being, because as soon as you move it, you may lose it.
Snatched up.
Yep, and
if you don't move it, you'll lose it.
Exactly. So the black pieces are also very well placed on the king side here, pointing towards the pawn g2. Yeah, the attacking chances of black are looking really good here.
And I love that knight because I feel like it has a lot of potential to move in many different squares. h4, u4, you could really take it anywhere, and it's going to end up being a pretty strong attacking piece.
Yep. So white needs to be careful, but for now it is Hikaru's turn. Perhaps he can activate the rook by playing rook d8 because the queen moved, and since you have the chance to play rook d8, why not?
Yeah, get it on that open file. You'll be very, very happy. We'll see. We'll see. That bishop, I think it's fine where it is at the moment because that queen is, I really like your move suggestion because that queen is defending several pawns right now. It's defending the pawn on c4, it's defending the pawn on e3. So you're kind of forcing it back to even more of a passive position and taking up space.
Yeah, so the two rooks of white are also not doing great. Wow, Hikaru goes for the move rook e8, which turns out to be the best move in the position. He's eyeing towards that pawn on
So
e3, which is crazy. He's setting up the threat bishop h3.
That is a really crazy threat. No, you're so right there. You threaten the mate. You also threaten to take the pawn. And then you're left with a very, very sad position as well. He's just such an absolute trickster here. He has the best threats. Oh, and we see the b6 push. It feels like a little bit a move, just trying to create some counterplay here.
Yeah, he's trying to distract black's pieces, which makes a lot of sense, but Hikaru does not care. He literally doesn't care. Plays knight e5, and he can simply snatch off that pawn on c4.
Yeah, he can snatch it up whenever he wants. He doesn't even have to really worry about it right now. Although it's always something good to keep an eye out for. Let's see. You don't want to keep super pinned. That's an interesting move. Knight c4. So you're threatening right now e3. You are keeping an eye on that b6 pawn. That is a very versatile move.
Ooh, b7, and there's so many threats in position. White's threatening queen takes e6 and then promoting the pawn on b8. And if you take on e3 now, let's say queen takes e3, you trade off the queens, but then you may face some tactical issues. Let me make the moves on the board, because after knight takes e3, you have rook fe1. You may think, oh, there's a fork happening here, I'm going to win. But there's rook takes e6, and you're attacking the rook. If the rook captures back, white promotes. So this is a lost position for black, so you cannot play this that easily.
Wow, this is... Yeah, that's a very, very interesting line. Thank you for sharing that. And you do have to be a little bit careful of this pass pawn. You have to be a little careful of your entire position, which is why he's taking his time to think. He's now a minute down on the clock. He does have an increment here. If this goes to Armageddon, he will not have increment, but he is free to take the time he needs as long as it doesn't tick down too far. I think he'll still be fine.
In the meantime, Vidit officially drew his game against, let me take a look, Fedoseev. And that means since it was Armageddon, Vidit moves forward in the winner's bracket. He won his match against Fedoseev. I believe in the final position, he maybe was even winning, but he needed a draw, yeah. And that was enough for him to advance. So Fedoseev goes down to the losers bracket, but Vidit will be facing Grischuk in the final.
That will be such a fun showdown, Vidit versus Grischuk. So keep that on your calendars, folks. I would want to see that. It'll be a lot of fun seeing that match. Also, the losers bracket heating up. It seems like we've gotten very lucky with some of these pairings.
Oh, absolutely. This division is stacked. Division 2, it has some big names here, and we as an audience watching the games, we are getting spoiled.
We absolutely are getting spoiled here, especially commentating the games. It's very fun to be able to. Oop, I spilled.
Oh no!
It's very fun to be able to look at these games and just see some of our favorite players, see how they do against some of our other favorite players. I think we've had fun pairings such as Arjun versus Dubov, kind of a legendary pairing. I don't know, it's very exciting. And speaking of good pairings, we have Morali versus Kramnik, and Kramnik seems to be having a little bit of an advantage now in the first game of the losers bracket. So that is something interesting to take a look at.
Yeah, he is up the exchange. Finally, he took the exchange when he was able to. And now the question is how to convert this, because it looks very easy at first sight. Just place a rook on d6 and capture the pawn on b6 and go from there. But easier said than done, because how do you even reach d6? You have to get really creative, and that rook on e4 needs to keep defending that pawn on c4. Once you lose a pawn on c4, the winning chances become very minimal. So you have to make sure to get the pieces involved and attack the pawn b6 at the convenient time and way, because the pawn c4 is a big weakness.
Yeah, it's just a very open position, which makes the knight a little bit less useful in something like this. You do have outposts, but like you said, it's a little difficult to figure out how to use this knight properly, whereas these rooks have full range of motion, are able to keep protecting, attacking, really minimizing the squares that knight can go. It's a nice position for Kramnik.
Here I want to play f4, but Vladimir goes for rook d1 because he sees the potential in maneuvering the rook to the d file, perhaps preparing the move rook d5 to attack the pawn g5, which has now become a weakness. And after f6, now we have another weakness. f6 has become the weakness, and now Kramnik is setting up the rooks on the 6th rank.
That is brutal, because if you try to defend it, one of your pawns is falling, if not more. And you can see Karthikeyan is taking a little time to think, but this is not a situation you can really think yourself out of.
Yeah, this is not easy, because what move do you actually play here? You're almost in Zugzwang, because if you move the rook, let's say, to b8 to keep defending the pawn b6, then you face rook e7 and the king has to go to the 8th rank. That looks pretty sad, and you lose f6 as well. If you move king f7, I can see white play rook e6 just to be able to take the pawn on f6 with check. And yeah, if you move the knight to b3, then you're not attacking pawn c4 anymore, so what's the point?
And we see that on the board, king f7. We see king f7 on the board, which means that f6 pawn is most likely going to fall. I think you're right, we will see rook e6, which Kramnik is taking a second to think about. But I do think we'll see that on the board. Pawns are going to fall. That king is in a very precarious position, and I would say this will end up being a Kramnik victory for round 1.
I think so too. Kramnik is also up on the clock, so the chances of him making a big mistake here are not high at all. So yeah, with the rooks on the 6th rank, he can soon maneuver them to the very edge on the 6th rank to the right side, so he can give checks to the king, push it back to the 8th rank, and find a way to checkmate.
It's all about that, finding a way to checkmate.
Yes, welcome to
that.
chess.
Always find a way to checkmate. You know, the saddest thing about chess sometimes is, well, I love when my opponents resign so I can go eat. Sometimes you just want to deliver that beautiful checkmate, you know? You want that combination. I swear, if my opponents, I've had a few situations where my opponents just have a beautiful mate against me, just something gorgeous, and I'll just let them play it out. Like, even if you see it, I'll just let them play it out, because I know they're gonna want to frame that on their wall.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's so nice. I had some opponents that allowed the attacks to be played out as well. It's so satisfying. Once I'm in a winning position, I'm just having a good time. I'm enjoying it. If my opponent keeps playing, I'm just happy because maybe I get to deliver checkmate one way or the other.
Yeah, this is not the case though when you have like a pawn promotion and you have to just like play out this like queen king mate for a few moves. You're like, okay, whatever. But if you have a really nice combination, it is sometimes nice to get it on the board. I agree.
Mm-hmm. King e7 now on the board. You want to play rook g7, but then you lose a rook on f6. And since you have the opportunity to play, let's say rook a6 or even rook f5, you'd rather want to play that because you want to capture pawns without trading, really.
And I wonder if we will see a resignation from Karthikeyan. No, he is still fighting it out as long as you have these two passed pawns, but those passed pawns are falling. Those passed pawns are falling, and maybe even the knight is falling or the rook is falling, or you could trade rooks and take a pawn. Either way, you're gonna have a really nice attack.
Yeah. For now, rook takes c5, blunders knight e4 check, so you can't take the pawn on c5, unfortunately.
Those forks.
Yeah, those forks are quite mean. I guess you have to consider rook d5 at least, or rook e5 check first. And that may be the winning move, actually.
Okay, rook e5 check.
King d7, rook d5.
King d7. Yeah, that looks nice.
And then rook b6 is possible, but at least you get to capture g5 without losing material. So, I'm a little worried about those pawns on the queen side, though.
We do see that move, rook e5. Amazing. King moves over to d7, just what was discussed here. And now there's some decisions to be made.
Ooh, turns out to be a mistake.
Rook d5 was a mistake. Oh no, we have led wrong.
Oh no, we may have jinxed this.
Was rook g7. We may have. Oh wow. But it will still be hard to play out that draw with 10 seconds to 40 seconds. Although the time has even, this would be much easier for Kramnik if he still had his 2 minutes on the clock that he did a little earlier. You just have to be careful of these pawns. How exactly do you follow this up?
I'd be really scared for white here because those pawns are really pushing fast on the queen side. You really have to get creative here with white to stop these pawns without losing. So I'm very concerned for Kramnik here. If he overpushes now, he may end up in a lost position, so he needs to try to find a way to get rid of that knight on d6, capture a pawn on c4, and then somehow stop the b pawn. I think that's the way, because if he keeps the 2 rooks on the board, he may just lose.
That's absolutely insane. And not only that, but it's very, very tricky with 8 seconds on your clock. Takes the knight, goes for your suggestion, takes a pawn. Apparently that was also the wrong move. We are leading them wrong.
Oh no.
We're terrible. Oh
hey, I'm thinking like the 4 world champions, so it's something I will take.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wow. That's absolutely crazy that this is completely losing. I mean, it makes sense. There's an outside past pawn, but I was expecting it to be defendable much easier. I mean, there you go. Rook before check, king c3. And it's back to an equal position. This is completely crazy. What? King d4?
But he's still going for the win, it looks like, because he's 1 second his clock and he was so close to flagging.
Goodness.
Was so close to flagging. 2 seconds on his clock. No, don't flag, don't flag.
Before check, yes.
0.3 seconds. He was left with 0.3 seconds. Just a millisecond more. He really has to keep a handle on this or else he's going to flag. 0.5 seconds. He's giving us heart attacks here.
Oh, the king is moving to c2. Oh no! He didn't do it because now the g pawn is moving forward.
There's no way to take advantage of it.
King c3, g6.
G6.
This is draw. I think a draw is a fair result.
Oh, as long as he doesn't like flag there, it is a draw. takes, and then you have this pawn. Takes, and we have a draw, which is actually a very solid result for Karthikeyan, who was completely losing in this position before, leading the first match. This is the first match to be a draw. Draw. So they'll be starting their second match shortly.
That was a crazy endgame. I mean, both players were winning, drawing, lost. It was madness. And it goes to show that so much can happen in these rook endgames. Even if you're down exchange, some opportunities may arise. And Morali just kept fighting. And Yeah, I guess a draw is a fair result in the end because both players made so many mistakes, but it's understandable when they have so little time on their clocks.
No, absolutely. But it's still going to be actually very, very tough to kind of switch your mindset, get back in the game, continue to play it out. I don't know. And all the natural moves, like you were suggesting many natural moves, I was suggesting some natural moves, and it just ended up not being the correct moves. It was a very tricky position.
Yeah, this is madness, and this format is quite unforgiving, especially because these players are playing best of two matches. So this second game may be decisive for the match result. Whoever wins this game will move forward in the losers bracket. By the way, in the meantime, Hikaru managed to win his match against Fedoseev, so he is through to the losers bracket semifinal. Yeah, we'll see him back tomorrow. Unfortunately for Fedoseev, that's the end of his run, but he played fantastic chess, and yeah, it was awesome following his games. He put up a great fight against these big players.
Yeah, imagine you just finished your winner's bracket game, right? You're doing well, and you're like, okay, I lost my winner's bracket game, but at least I'll face someone easier. And then you're paired against Hikaru. A little bit of a tough run there, but what can you do? There's no break. There's no rest for the weary here.
I'm just quickly going to check if we have the losers bracket of Division 3 going on, because I believe we're also expecting the losers bracket of round 5 to be played here, but there's a chance they may have finished already. I'm quickly trying to take a look, but there's so many games that we have seen in the past few days, and it's stacked here.
It is. We've seen so many very exciting games. I'm also taking a look here. It looks like we're all done with our
It looks like
games.
they're all done. So, Alexander Bortnik, oh, he lost his match against Jaime Santos Latasa. He was doing so amazing. But Jaime Santos Latasa takes down Alexander Bortnik, and with that,
Big
Bortnik
takedown, yeah.
is out. And Jaime Santos Latasa, we will see him back tomorrow in the losers bracket, as well as Chan Sargsyan, who took down Yavogir Sindarov. So these are the results in Division 3, which means that we only have one more game here going on between Vladimir Kramnik and Kartik-Jan Morali. That's it.
Absolutely. And since the last game ended in a draw and this is the losers bracket, it means that this game, if there is a decisive result, it will call whoever wins the champion. But if they draw, they will be going to Armageddon. So very, very important game here.
Yeah, and so far, I really like Vladimir Kramnik's position. He activates his pieces. At least the bishop on c6 and the queen on b7 are placed pretty actively, pointing towards that bishop on g2. And in the meantime, white's pieces are not the greatest. I mean, this bishop on e5 is great, but it's not really doing much without support of the other pieces. So white needs to start finding some harmony in the position, getting the pieces to work together, because currently they're not really doing much.
Yeah, but it almost seems like Karthikeyan's the master of fighting himself out of very bad positions because of what we saw last game. So it's never too late for this grandmaster here. I don't know, it's gonna be hard to find some sort of counterplay. These pieces seem sort of out of harmony. I'm trying to figure out what would be the best way to go about it. Chat, what would you do if you are Karthikeyan? How would you try to make any progress or create some form of counterplay?
One way is to play fast and put pressure on the clock. Just make healthy moves, don't blunder. That should be a working strategy at least. But you can also just try to stack the rooks on e-file. I really like to see that, but Morali does not go for that. Plays rook ad1 and is trying to maneuver the knight, I think, to e3 perhaps. Maybe he's looking to play g4 actually, which is a crazy looking move, but I can see it work out with the knight moving to g3, and you can find a way to yeah, make sure that the king on g1 is safe.
Well, unfortunately, you cannot push g4 right now. You have to retreat your bishop. Maybe you saw that in advanced, kind of interesting move. But now that bishop is taking up that e3 square where that knight can no longer go. And we have a very, very sad looking knight. That knight is not a happy camper. That knight has not been picked for gym class. That knight is all alone.
Oh no.
Doing nothing. I mean, maybe you could try to reroute to h2, h3. I don't know. And like there's maybe even g5, but why?
I want to see it.
There.
I want to see g5 played by black. Maybe it's unnecessary, but without these unnecessary moves, there's no fun, right? So we have to find ways to make fun, have fun in chess. But yeah, Vladimir put up this pawn structure on the king side. He knows that white wants to try to play g4, and he made sure to stop that altogether. Now g4 is out of the question completely. This knight is trying to maneuver around, head to f3, and yeah, he's perhaps going for that g5 square.
It's a very long maneuver this knight is taking. It's a very long journey.
It is a long journey.
I hope he's packed his bags, his utensils and everything. Do people pack utensils? I don't know. Whatever people pack. I hope he's packed that because that knight is on a very long journey and none of the other pieces are particularly well placed either. It's difficult to see how you make any progress, but also black has to make some progress too, which isn't the easiest.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to start thinking, do you want to move d4 at some point? Do you first want to stack rooks on the e-file? But for now, the players are maneuvering their pieces. This knight is heading to f5, so... yeah, looks really good for Kramnik. But indeed, not very clear what the next few moves are.
No, not very clear at all. Anything can happen in this kind of position. So right now, let's see what the best move for Morali would be. But he's trying something. He's just trying to change the structure, which is very interesting with that pawn sack.
I think that's just losing a pawn.
Oh, he just takes... Yeah, it's just a pawn.
That looks like just a free pawn.
Although I have heard when you're in a completely losing and you hate your position and you hate your life and you don't want to do anything with your position or your life, you should always try to change the structure of your position. And he did do that. The structure is completely changed right now.
Yeah, true. That's a very good point. To release the pieces and yeah, to find a way to come back because activity over material sometimes, especially when it's just a pawn. Because as soon as the queens are off the board, I can see white go rook d7, activate the rook, and create some chances this way. But for now, the knight goes to f3, and black is just up a full pawn and has no weaknesses whatsoever.
Yeah, I like bishop f4, although it doesn't really do much. If we could maybe get the rook to d7 would be nice, but I don't know if there's time for such a move. It's difficult to see the best way to go about it. And Kramnik right now has the exact same idea. He wants to move his rook into e2. How do you defend? Are you forced to be incredibly passive? What do you do? I don't know, maybe trade off the rooks, but that doesn't look very fun when you're down a pawn either.
Exactly, and I guess after rook d7, you have at least rook e7, but perhaps playing a5 is also possible just to save the pawn. But looking at this position now, black is completely dominating here as the knight is on d4, stopping the rook from infiltrating, and yeah, I trust Kramnik to convert this. He is, after all, known to be very good at endgames. Last game was a bit of a slip for both players, but being up a pawn, a healthy pawn, should not be difficult to convert.
How do you create any last-minute counterplay? We see bishop e3, which feels like it's not really doing much, but there isn't much to be done either. You see a trade. I don't know. Where's that rook going? You're just down 2 pawns now. You're down 2 pawns and that last pawn will be falling soon. And look at that horrid queenside majority of pawns just absolutely storming through. I would take your prediction as well and say this will be a Kramnik victory.
Yeah, this is a tough position for Morali. I mean, a few moves ago, it was already super difficult to defend. The pawns of white are simply too weak, and black has consolidated the pawns on the queen side very well. So really difficult to find counterplay here for white. And yeah, this match may end very soon.
Absolutely, this match could end very soon. I agree with this statement, and honestly, it's just incredibly tough to defend something like this, and it's a psychological thing too. Like when you're trying to stay absolutely sharp in a position you know just is dead lost, sometimes your mind goes to sleep. I've had positions that are dead lost end games. My opponent made a blunder, which is a win for me, and I just don't see it because my mind is already in losing mode. So it's just very, very hard to keep your brain awake in these types of positions.
Yeah, and you have to look out for the final trick still, because for now rook takes f6 doesn't work, but you have to keep an eye on these moves, that maybe there's a chance that if I move my king, let's say, which is exactly what Morali does,
which happened.
Rook takes f6 could be possible in order to play bishop c3 and win a piece. But very well spotted by Kramnik that that was a threat, and he plays bishop d4. He now pins the bishop on e3, and this is pretty much over.
Yeah, that does not look to be a fun position. Yet another pawn will be falling. That pawn that takes back on e3 will be falling. And what are you going to do? How do you defend against everything? I guess the b pawn also will fall as well, which actually, it's interesting what you should decide to do here. Should you continue to protect your b pawn or go for the e3 pawn? What do you think?
I guess one way to go with this is that you leave the pawn on e3. We don't need it whatsoever because it remains a weakness for the rest of the game. What we want is to try to, let's say we push the c pawn and we could trade it for the a pawn so that we have the two connected pawns on the queen side. And then those are much easier to push over there. So I would try to push the c pawn.
Ideas, yeah.
And
it looks
just
exactly like that's what's happening.
Yeah, just sacrifice the c-pawn, get the pawn on a4, and that should be easily winning.
Yeah, that seems to be exactly what's happening. Although Kramnik is thinking for a second, he wants to make sure that he is making the right decision after that last endgame. Yeah. After that last endgame where it switched so quickly, he's definitely taking a think, which he can afford to do since there is increment in this game. And we see actually a very interesting c4 push.
Yeah, but now the king is very close, so you can't easily sacrifice the pawn because the king will be able to capture it. But yeah, instead he just takes the pawn on a4 right away. He loses the pawn on b6, but he still has those two extra pawns. Gives a check on a3. If king d4, I can see him take the pawn on g3 and focus on the king side instead.
Focus on the king side. You'll be so busy defending with that queen side that your pawns will be able to promote. It seems like a pretty easy conversion here.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. The players are taking it easy because they have a lot of time still left, and the players have 2 seconds increments, so they're not really in a rush. Even if they get down to 20 seconds, they'll be able to accumulate their time because of the increment in case it's necessary.
Absolutely, and some last minute try to gain a pawn to have some sort of counterplay, some sort of a last hurrah. But what do you do? Look at these very quick pawns. You can try to take one, but the other will just be coming anyway. Even if you lost those 2 pawns, it would still be a draw, honestly. So he has a lot of opportunities here, but we're going to see some really nice technique, I think, which is beneficial always.
Yeah, king moves forward, so that's a good start. Both rooks are sort of in zugzwang because as soon as the black rook moves, 1 pawn drops. As soon as the white rook moves, let's say the rook goes to c8, the rook can move to b3 and will be released from that pawn on a4, and then the pawn can go to a3 and conversion will be much easier. So yeah, what does white do here now? If the king moves back, then you can try to play moves such as g5 and slowly push forward. Actually, king e3 invites c2 check, so you can't just play moves like that so easily.
But we do three. King e3, c2 check, king d2. You're catching the pawn in time, but at what cost? Your king has moved away, as you said, from that king side, and you will end up facing some issues there.
Yeah, now just rook a2 and hold on to the pawn for the time being because the king will move up. Or just take the pawn g3. That's also fine. We're just pawn grabbing. Rook g2 now. Still holding on that pawn, onto that pawn on c2. Yeah. And the king is just infiltrating now.
This is kind of interesting. You'll end up taking... You have to be careful, but it looks like you're going to end up taking... Well, actually, okay. Can your king go to f4 if you're Kramnik?
I guess you can, yeah.
Yeah.
If e5, you just take with the king back.
Just happy, yeah. So then you are infiltrating. There's nothing you can really do to stop it. Although if your king gets all the way to h4, maybe then e5 is an issue.
I guess worst case scenario, even if you get to take the pawn on f6 with white, even then there will be a passed pawn on h5 that will just move forward, and it's easy to stop the f pawn. So no matter what white tries, I mean, something really insane must happen for Kramnik to blunder this.
I mean, we have commentators jinxed before.
Yep, but
we see it.
The game is over. Kramnik wins the game and gets to live another day in the losers bracket, and he will move on. We will see him tomorrow again, but it is over for Morali, who played amazing an amazing event so far, but sadly went down against Vladimir Kramnik.
Yes, unfortunately he will be sent home, and Vladimir Kramnik will continue in the losers bracket. A great victory. He's been playing very, very well, absolutely defending his status here. And we will see him tomorrow in the losers bracket, I believe, semifinals and finals, perhaps. Yeah, just finals, right? Was this the semifinals? Let's see.
This was round. Let's see. This is round 3 for Division 2. So tomorrow we'll have the semifinals and the finals. So the winners final will be tomorrow, and the losers semifinal, and after that the losers final. So tomorrow the action continues, everyone. This seems to be the end for today. A short day as all the games have finished already, but what an exciting day, and so many more matches tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be super exciting, as we will see who will come out as the winners in the winners and losers bracket, because these two players will then face each other in the grand final.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I will not be commentating tomorrow because I am heading to LA to play the Botas Invitational Tournament, but I will be tuning in because I'm very excited to see what happens. I hope you all are enjoying, and Anna-Maja, thank you so much for commentating with me.
Thank you so much,
amazing.
It was
almost
a pleasure.
Making up for beating me over the board. Almost.
It was a pleasure commentating with you, Jules. Lots of good luck to you in the tournament. We will be looking at the games very closely, and I'm super excited to follow your games. So lots of good luck. And yeah, it was awesome to commentate with you. Hope to be back in the commentary booth with you together. But for now, we're saying goodbye. And thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thanks so much for the support. And with that, this was the CrunchLabs Masters for today. Tomorrow, the action continues. We will see who will be my co-host tomorrow. But super excited for tomorrow's matches. And with that, we say goodbye. Thanks for watching, everyone.